Right, let's talk about float choice. I'm going to be doing quite a bit of shallow fishing today. We're at Lindome Lakes. I'm going to be fishing with maggots. So let's take into consideration the bait that I'm using. Maggots are a really slow sinking bait, which gives the fish that opportunity to come higher near the surface to intercept that bait because it falls at a slower rate. So for that reason, I'll be fishing really shallow. And it's really important to choose the right float that sits correctly in the water. So we've got two different patterns here for my shallow fishing, which I'd say my go-to floats for my caster, especially my caster and my maggot work. They just work brilliantly. So for a start, let's talk about the fixed rig. We've got a Mark Harris diamond float. I absolutely love these floats. They've got a bristle and a carbon stem, but the shape of the diamond allows that body of the float to hold nice and tight in that water, keep the rig nice and straight, but more importantly, as you're what we call slapping that rig, making that noise on that surface, giving those fish a reason to home in on your hook bait around your feeding zone, so to speak. They sit instantly in the water, which is really important for shallow fishing. You want everything to work nice and fast because you're going to get bites very quickly from that reaction of that noise. And that's the beauty about these rigs. I've made them up on 019 Aero slick silk. Love this line, so friendly with shot, very durable, brilliant line for making rigs and hook lengths. But there's a slight little difference, if you notice, a slight little variation in depth, because fishing for F1s and small match carp, like where we are today on the bonsai, you need to be deadly accurate with the depth. Some days they might want to feed at 10 inches deep, 11, 12, 13, 14, and throughout the session they will feed at different depths. So you need to be equipped and have the right rig just to naturally pick up and change that depth by a slight adjustment. And you can see actually it's literally a float length difference between the first and the second rig, and the difference is literally night and day sometimes. So it's really important to have that in your armory, not just set one rig up but fish two different rigs, because it's really important to try and get away with the shortest length of line between the pole tip and the float, so you actually hit the bites a lot more efficiently. And at this venue we're only allowed to use an 8-inch lash, therefore I've got to set up two different rigs in order for me to make the most of that bolt rig effect that I want to try and get when I'm shallow fishing. And of course the beauty about a fixed rig is you are putting your bait at a specific depth all the time. So when they're really, when the fish are really in tune with the depth that they want to feed at, it allows you as an angler to find out what depth those fish are feeding at with a fixed rig. I've shotted them up with two number 10s as a dropper. Now basically these floats don't take a lot of weight, but also I want that natural fall of maggots. We want to incorporate the same principle with the bait that's on our hook as what we're feeding, that the maggots of the loose fed maggots are falling nice and slow through the water. We want to achieve the same bait presentation with our rig, and that's why I've only got two shots down each of the rigs with a very short hook length, a 3-inch hook length, and I might even shorten that down to a 2-inch hook length if the fish are really taking that bait positively, because a shorter hook length allows that rig to stay straighter in the water and create that quicker response from hooking the fish when they take in your bait. Now the third rig I want to talk about is, let's just put these down, so the jigger. Now this is one of the most effective ways of catching fish shallow, simply because it's a bolt rig effect, because unlike the fixed rig, this is a free running float that runs up and down the line. So it's purely down to you, the angler, to hold your pole in a specific position which dictates at what depth your hook bait is. So let's say for example I ship out, I slap my float on the surface to create that noise. I want to hold my pole higher up in the air so my float is nearer my bowl, therefore my hook bait is nearer the surface because the fish are coming up to that noise. But the beauty about the jigger is if I don't get a bite on that process, I can then follow my loose feed down by lowering my pole tip, and gradually that float moves up the line or down the line, so to speak, which descends my hook bait with my loose feed. The beauty about the Jig Rig is it helps you locate at what depth those fish are feeding very, very quickly. And what's so good about it is you're covering such a big variation, a big diversity in depths. And especially when those fish are wanting to feed in those deeper water, in that deeper depth, a jigger is really, really effective because your line is always straight. So when a fish intercepts your bait at a deeper depth, the fish hooks itself on the hook, which is connected not to the float, but to the pole tip, because the line is running straight through this rig. So whenever I go fishing, I always set up at least 2 fixed rigs and at least 1 jigger rig. And literally that covers me for all my shallow fishing, whether I'm fishing pellets, maggots or casters on every commercial across the country.